Good morning, especially to those of you joining us from the West Coast, and thank you for joining us. My name is Sean Forster. I'll be your moderator for today's discussion, and I'd like to be the first to welcome you to today's webinar, Expanding Frontiers, the State of Payment Integrity in 2018. We've got a lot to get through today, so let's go ahead and get started. First, I do have a few housekeeping items. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode, so there's no need to mute your lines. And although lines are muted, we do encourage you to ask questions during our time together. To do so, please submit any questions using the questions window located on the right side of your screen. Type your question into the box and click send, so they'll be sent directly to me to queue for our Q&A session we'll host at the end of the hour. Should you encounter any technical difficulties during the webinar, please also utilize this questions window to describe your issue, and one of our support staff will follow up with you to troubleshoot. We'll also be using polling questions today, so when we get to a polling question, I'll pause our speaker to read out the question. You'll have a minute or so to record your response, and we'll then share the results. In case you're worried, no attendees will be able to see your individual responses. It's just the sum totals that are shown. It's just not often that we have so many folks that are all involved in the payment integrity industry in one place together, so it's kind of a nice way to kind of see how colleagues are doing and how they're using some of the same challenges that we're all facing. Today's webinar has also been awarded 1 CPE credit by NHCAA. To claim credit, attendees must complete an online attestation form prior to May 18th. So you'll receive a link to NHCAA's form in the follow-up email that we will send along with the recording of today's presentation to you by the end of this week. And with that, I'm happy to introduce to you our two speakers for today's presentation. Monique Pierce is CIO's Vice President of Business Optimization. In this role, she focuses on the performance and efficiency of solutions within the reimbursement optimization service line, which really encompasses all of the payment integrity topics we'll be talking about today. She's in charge of driving innovation for CO, which requires to stay up to date on all the trends and emergent challenges faced by health plans. Prior to joining CO, Monique led payment integrity efforts at a national health plan for 15 years. Joining Monique is Leslie Strader. Leslie manages the entire product lifecycle from strategic planning to tactical activities for CO's reimbursement optimization platform, CO Mine. In this role, she works directly with clients, technology, analytics, and business operations teams to develop new products and enhance existing solutions. Prior to joining CO, Leslie spent over 20 years in healthcare consulting, supporting reimbursement integrity for healthcare providers nationwide. And we're going to start off today's discussion by taking a broad look at the industry, assessing where we stand in general, as well as reviewing some of the headwinds and tailwinds specifically impacting payment integrity efforts. We'll then take stock of our current solution mix as it relates to where we find ourselves in 2018 and where we at CO see potential opportunity to make improvements. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time walking through what we see as a pathway that applies to the majority of health plans today. Leslie and Monique will discuss a pragmatic approach to updating some tactics that may have gotten stale, as well as strategic investments that can be made in some innovative solutions that have just recently come online in the last few years. With our remaining time, we'll use for a discussion and to also answer your specific questions. But before we get to that, I wanted to explain a little bit about the metaphor that we'll be using throughout this webinar today. And as we were putting together the material for this presentation, Monique, Leslie, and I, we kept on returning back to this concept of payment integrity improvements being like a journey. You know, it really could apply to any large project, but especially one as complex as what our industry contends with. We felt this exploration journey metaphor really sunk our teeth into it. And if you're going to have a successful journey, like say a Lewis and Clark expedition, you're going to need to answer some key questions as a part of that planning. Otherwise, you run the risk of becoming the next Donner Party, so to speak. So these are the key questions that we identified need to answer before you embark on a journey. You're going to need to be able to describe your destination, understand your starting place, know what path you'll take and what the risks are. Your plans may change once you're on the journey, and that's okay, but you should have a good idea of what to expect. You'll need to have a team in place, a timeline, and you'll need a way to get there. So our hope is that you'll start formulating answers specific to your organization as a part of participating in this webinar. But really the most important question that you're going to need to answer is, what's the purpose? What is the why of what we're doing here? For Lewis and Clark, the why was expanding the U.S. economic opportunity through a route to the Pacific Ocean. That worked for them. They're able to rally around that. For us, our why is how we eliminate payment errors. We're going to do that by striking a balance between an increasingly proactive approach supported by retrospective, reactive tactics. And Monique and Leslie are going to walk through a 4-step process that we think applies to most health plans. Before I turn things over officially to Leslie and Monique, though, that does bring us to our first polling question of the day. So if we could go ahead and please get that launched. And the polling question is this: what percent of your overpayments are currently captured? I'm not sure we're able to share the polling question. So it looks like the polling question is closed. We will try to get that settled for the next polling question that we have. Apologies for the technical difficulty we had there. So why don't I turn things over now to Leslie then, who will be able to walk us through some of the headwinds and tailwinds that we're experiencing as an industry. So Leslie?
Thank you, Sean. Hello, everyone. Waste is a $1 trillion, sorry about that, I'm moving ahead.
No worries, I think there's a little bit of a delay, so if you go back one. Perfect, it should catch up on your screen soon.
Okay. Waste is a $1 trillion problem in the United States healthcare system. This is driven by the way our healthcare is organized, delivered, and paid for. The 4 main areas of waste are inaccurate payments, clinical waste, administrative complexity, and price variation. Fraudulent billings account for approximately 3 to 10% of total healthcare spend. This can include billing for services never provided, oftentimes with patients' participation in the fraud, or another example is billing claims for deceased patients. Provider and patient behaviors can also drive clinical waste, such as using the ER for non-emergent conditions. This amounts to $21.4 billion annually. Efficiencies and lack of standardized policies and procedures contribute to exorbitant costs in the U.S. healthcare. By simplifying our healthcare system administration, this could help reduce annual healthcare costs by approximately $300 billion. The U.S. spends 2 times more in healthcare than other developed countries, yet our health outcomes are no better or no worse. The difference in spending is caused mostly by higher prices in the U.S. and the variation of pricing in geographic areas. Our system lacks the ability to tie pricing to efficiency, outcomes, and fair profit. Payment integrity is faced with many challenges today that need to be overcome. Overbilling schemes are becoming increasingly complex and difficult to stay on top of. Drug costs and medical treatments continue to rise, along with aging populations and patients with chronic conditions. Providers are merging and increasing their negotiating power. This while the industry is focused on keeping good working relationships with providers to reduce abrasion. While facing these challenges, it's imperative to stay on top of the ever-changing government and regulatory mandate changes. With increased technology and the power of partnering, it enables the healthcare system to gain speed and efficiency while improving knowledge and insights. Technology is making it easier to work with high claim volumes as we see the industry shift to more outpatient procedures. Prepay reviews are essential to stop the pay and chase and provider abrasion that is associated with post-pay reviews. Data integration provides insight into members and providers to create profiles to understand the complex data sets and identify trends in the data. It is essential to have analytic models that are accurate and efficient to keep ahead of the evolution of healthcare.
Great. That brings us to our second, or should I say first poll question of the day. So let's give this another try. If we could go ahead and please launch the polling question. And our question is, which of the headwinds that Leslie just mentioned is having the greatest impact on payment integrity at your organization? A, provider consolidation. B, increased complexity of overbilling schemes. C, diminishing returns from business as usual. D, rising prices and aging members. Or E, the size and complexity of data. And it looks like the poll is working, at least I think I had an issue on my side before. So let's just give one more moment. Looks like the majority of people are voting here. So please, let's go ahead and close the poll and share the results. And it looks like really there's two answers. There's the increased complexity of overbilling schemes, and the size and complexity of data are the two primary challenges that people are facing. So thank you for participating in the poll. We do have a couple more that we'll be sharing. And with that, I want to turn things over to Monique, who will be walking us through the state of payment integrity solutions in 2018. So Monique, you should have control now. There might be a little bit of a delay, but it looks like the slides are advancing. Maybe went past a little bit. But.
Okay. Page back up. Thanks, Sean, and good morning, everyone. We do seem to be jumping slides. I apologize, as Leslie did.
Should be on 17.
There we go.
Yep.
There you go. Thanks. Again, good morning. As we start our journey with a summary of 4 payment integrity programs: high dollar, fraud, waste, and abuse, COB, and subrogation. These are the foundation of most payers' cost containment efforts. Each of these programs is well established with multifaceted audited approaches, including prospective and retrospective reviews through system edits, second pass reviews that are often called focus audits, and contracts with specializing vendors like CO. These programs produce consistent avoidance and recovery savings. And to carry our frontier analogy forward, a payment integrity auditor is much like a prospector. Whereas a prospector goes on a journey seeking to discover treasure and needs to look in many places, an auditor reviews many suspected claims to identify recovery savings. Auditing needs to be performed by balancing different approaches for different claim types and payment methods. To identify billing errors, payers often use one or more claim editors that apply business rules and flag the claim for review. Data mining is the practice of looking across claims for patterns and outliers to identify both billing and payment errors. And finally, medical records reviews are used to identify that upcoding or level of care errors and to ensure compliance and policy adherence. Our polling questions suggest that these clinical reviews or these complex reviews and the practice of upcoding or overbilling is a primary concern. In addition to applying these approaches to recover overpayments, payers apply the same strategy to identify errors prospectively to avoid the overpayment. This is like comparing the advancement from a compass to more sophisticated navigation tools. The direction the compass is pointing us next is our primary message for the webinar. Innovations that open up opportunity for more audits, more volume, at the same time as improving speed, cost, and quality is the payment integrity roadmap. Audit innovations need to deliver benefits sooner at a reduced administrative burden and with higher success. Whether your business unit is called cost containment, payment integrity, audit and recovery, every year the targets and goals get larger and larger and teams are asked to do more with less. How many times have you heard that? Do more with less. There are two solutions that unlock new capabilities to help payers meet those targets. The first is the expansion of prepayment auditing. With the quick cadence of technology advancements in data management and analytics and system interfaces, it's possible to complete complex audit reviews within the initial prompt pay timelines and to avoid overpayments. Prepay audits deliver the trifecta of benefits, the improvements to speed, quality, and cost. The second innovation targets a new opportunity in expanding the frontier, so to speak. Again, due to technology and communication capabilities, payers can better control medical costs for claims not typically in scope for audit reviews, such as non-par providers and high-volume, lower-dollar claims. Through a provider behavior modification solution, we can drive change using tools from other approaches and applying advanced analytics and workflow management systems, provider engagement to identify and manage provider outliers based on cost and utilization. Today, we're going to review the points on that map that we described, that journey or expedition that correspond to the journey or direction that a payer may take on their quest for higher, increased savings dollars. CEO believes that by adopting a pioneering approach and incorporating prospective tactics to traditional retrospective programs, a plan can maximize that opportunity. There's 4 major destinations on our journey: longitudinal data mining, expansion of our post-pay audit programs into the outpatient and ancillary claim types, the prepay clinical auditing, and the provider behavior modification. As you will see, our explorer also takes a break along the journey to apply insights gained along the way. This includes correcting systems and process issues and possibly addressing payment policy opportunities that are identified through root cause analysis and of the payment errors that have resulted in repeated recoveries. So as we start the journey, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie to talk about longitudinal data mining and outpatient audits.
Thank you, Monique. Longitudinal data mining is a progressive approach which uses a customized solution design that applies industry trends, client-specific designs, and analytics and automation. Industry trends can include, but are not limited to, provider trends, coordination of benefits, and claims processing platforms. Based on a client's feedback, adjustments are made to produce the highest level of quality. This will ensure it's understood some of the client-specific exclusions and inclusions before proceeding into the client-specific design. The client-specific design phase includes claim processing policies, provider or member contracts. At CO, we use our vast experience and apply interpretation to the client-specific design. Our clients go through an approval process of our interpretation. This process includes overpayment examples along with documentation that supports our interpretation. We work with our client counterparts to assist in education and training within various units to gain concept approval. The third and final phase is the analytics and automation. The work performed in the industry trends and client-specific design ensures there's an understanding of what the client would like to pursue. This phase also identifies factors that would override claim payments while ensuring there's quality results that are optimal. Using a subset of data sources to create profiles, it allows users to track characteristics, which may include demographics, clinical factors, utilization, and risk. The profiles can be leveraged for selections in data mining. So let's review the 4 factors to selections. We'll first start with claim profiles, which typically contain an extensive library of queries, which is continually reviewed and updated by subject matter experts. The provider profiles may include claims billed by the provider, member risk scores, demographics related to the provider's location, quality and efficiency, and benchmarking. The member profiles often store member conditions, utilization, a member's accrued costs, risk based on clinical and payment history, and lifestyle preferences. The payer profiles encompass a payment lifecycle that contains bundled payments, quality and compliance data, and payer benchmarking. By utilizing enterprise data, companies like CO incorporate the profiles and bring forward analytic patterns to create a hybrid analytical approach. Using client-specific continuous feedback loops that support model refinement. Using the feedback loops allows for greater reduction in false positives over time. It is also important to fine-tune the selection sensitivity based on error likelihood and dollar amounts to match the client's payment policy, along with network relationships and resource availability. This should also be customizable based on a claim lifecycle, for instance, a higher threshold in prepaid than postpay. By pinpointing underlying problems such as process gaps and inefficiencies through claim error pattern analysis, it allows for errors to be identified that may not have been visible in different approaches. It is vital for any data mining program that new concepts are developed based on CMS payment regulation and client-specific rules. Applying a longitudinal data mining approach brings forward visibility to pattern identification that is missed in standard one-by-one reviews. This view creates the ability to identify repeated errors by the same provider that occur over time. The depiction on your screen references payments above and below allowed amounts for home health and identifies questionable billing behaviors and patterns. This rare error is able to be captured while a traditional review may have missed that pattern of billing. It is essential to be able to detect errors that occur between the sites of care, such as double billing, questionable coding, and billing patterns. Applying a data mining approval using a customized design solution allows for the validation of concepts and anticipated outcomes. The audit concepts are refined to take into account any provider exclusions or limitations. This ensures high accuracy and the reduction of provider abrasion. Concepts should be refined to allow an alignment. This enables a message from a vendor partner and a client to be specific and consistent with the delivery of high accuracy. After Approximately 6 months, data mining can be transformed to an automated process after key components such as data, claims processing, and pricing systems within the concepts are validated. Some techniques used in the automation include robotic process, screen scraping, and macros. Each production should require a specific percentage of audits to pass quality measures. This process will ensure high quality standards and accuracy are produced. Let's transition from data mining to discuss the PostPay outpatient programs and navigating through an industry that is transitioning from inpatient settings to outpatient. Various forces are driving treatment from acute care settings towards lower levels of care. Patient outcomes are as good or even better for patients as compared to inpatient. Typically, outpatient services are provided at a lower cost, and there's increased patient satisfaction. Patients want to be home. Additionally, there's increasing availability of less invasive treatments that allow for better and faster recoveries. As outpatient grows in popularity, so does fraud, waste, and abuse in this segment. Our focus as an industry on hospital care has squeezed the balloon, and now fraud, waste, and abuse in this segment is much more common. As inpatient services are shrinking, hospitals are providing more services in outpatient settings. They are also having to adjust to balance revenue lost from reduced inpatient stays. The past decade has seen a dramatic and continuous growth of outpatient claims, with one source noting a 33% overall increase. This trend is not expected to abate. The high volumes of claims makes it difficult for health plans to identify overpayments, while providers are seeing outpatient settings as their future of care and revenue generation. Medical record reviews of outpatient claims ensure claims are documented and billed appropriately. Partnering with a company like CO enables health plans to get to the higher volume, lower dollar claims that cannot always be accessed or gotten to. Some of the key areas that are prone to error are displayed. At CO, our reviews can range from validating units billed, are also documented in the medical record, to identifying canceled procedures that are billed but not performed. It is important to stay on top of the ever-increasing outpatient services, since high-volume errors can equate to large amounts of overpaid dollars.
Thank you, Leslie. And that actually brings us to our next polling question of the day, and it's related to the topic that Leslie just mentioned, outpatient auditing. So we go ahead and launch this poll, please. And the question is, if you are in an organization that's currently auditing outpatient claims, which is your organization's leading area of error? So we mentioned a few of them here. We have infusion, radiation or oncology, trauma, option D, interventional radiology, or E, wound care. So we'll give folks just a few moments to get their answer in before we move on to steps 3 and 4, which will be covered by Monique. And it looks like we're getting just about 50% of respondents answering, and there seems to be some agreement on the main issue. So let's go ahead and close the poll, please, and share the results. And one result, A, infusion, stands out amongst the rest, but then there's between that, a little bit of similar results for the remaining options there. So thank you again for participating. And I'll hand things over now to Monique to talk us through prepayment medical record reviews. Monique? And Monique, it looks like you're able to advance the slides okay, but you may be on mute.
No, the first thing that we'll start with is what is prepayment? We'll back up a page. Prepayment is a specific point in time in the life cycle of a claim. Prepayment represents the small window of time within the overall prompt pay timeline that's between adjudication and of the claim and the payment or the denial of the claim. Just as the adjudication process is repeated for each submission of a claim, the prepayment opportunity can be repeated as well. The actual window of time to audit is variable number of days after receipt of the claim, and that number of days is variable based on a number of factors, such as line of business, state, and submission type. The window of opportunity to perform the prepay audit, especially a clinical review, can be quite small. However, with the right systems, process, and people in-house or through a strong partner, a payer can increase savings by preventing the overpayment. They can realize those savings sooner with different tactics, and they can lessen the provider abrasion and reduce administrative costs. The challenge to a successful prepayment program is having those systems, processes, and people or resources available. A workflow management system needs to both integrate data from multiple sources and interface with other systems to manage and expedite many processes at the same time. Processes like medical records request, routing, and outcome reporting. And you also need trained, certified clinical staff that can support global delivery to meet very tight turnaround times. Clinical reviews are used to identify overpayment due to overbilling. Again, I'll reference the results from our first polling question. Overbilling can be very difficult to identify and uphold without a robust clinical review and dispute process. CO finds overpayment in 4 major categories: compliance of documentation guidelines, delivery of the right level of care for the member's condition, performing services in the most appropriate and cost-effective site of service, and providing services that are not medically necessary. The challenge to a successful clinical audit is in selection of the high-risk claims. Selection is dependent on strong analytics built on those 4 profiles: the claim, payer, provider, and member. Clinical reviews are the best approach to identify overbilling, and findings may be a result of revenue maximization efforts applied by the provider. This leads us to our 4th destination, the frontier, a solution called provider behavior modification. The solution must have the ability to drive provider change and realize a long-term effect. The desired effect is cost containment through lower billed amounts and lower utilization, especially on claims that would otherwise be under the radar. Other solutions and approaches are needed to solve for billing and payment errors. However, payers are increasingly in need of a solution to manage the overall claim spend. Using the same tools applied for identification of overpayments, plans can partner with companies like CO to analyze and identify a provider's risk of overutilization and payment errors, and to provide education and monitoring to drive the desired billing behavior. Provider behavior modification uses the same systems, same processes and tools needed for prepayment auditing. Again, these are analytics driven by robust profiles, integrated systems that manage the end-to-end workflow, and a highly experienced clinical team. This slide demonstrates 6 of the high-level processes for behavior modification: analytics, that produce the best suspecting, analysts must consider many factors to minimize false positives. Reviews need to be validated, and those reviews can include both institutional and professional claims, and a combination of those. Auditors identify upcoding and that overutilization and then provide findings to providers and payers. Measurements like benchmarking provide insights that are actionable. Program delivers information and education through a provider engagement model. And the last is that ongoing monitoring. Through reports, dashboards, and scorecards, we can quantify and qualify the change to ensure continued change. Like prepayment audits, behavior modification delivers value by reducing payment errors, but it also reduces medical expense through lower utilization. The solution captures new under-the-radar opportunities and hard-to-recover scenarios, such as non-PAR providers. Measurement and monitoring are key to a successful provider behavior modification. Unlike other solutions, the benefit is not realized just on the identification and recovery of an overpayment. It is necessary to track and trend a provider's claims over a long period of time to measure the impact of the provider engagement activity. One of the tools used is a provider scorecard, utilizing multiple dimensions to ensure contributing factors like subspecialty or member risk and geographical location. A scorecard rates the provider against his or her peers and ranks that provider on multiple metrics trended over time. This provides a level of transparency that assists a payer and a provider during negotiations and the means to track the program's success. Results for the solution include ranking of outlier providers on both spectrums. A provider's rank provides insight that is actionable. We call our anchors gold-carded and red-flagged. Actions taken by a provider for each of these anchors can include incentives and penalties for uncorrected issues. And moving on to one of our last slides for this section, finally, how does a payer choose which program to build or improve? We've talked about these 9 programs or approaches and solutions. As we've learned today, each one targets different opportunities, and a collection of programs and approaches and solutions is best to maximize the overall effectiveness of the payment integrity and cost containment strategy. The chart reviews what we've covered today and suggests an order for plans to consider. It's based on opportunity, level of effort, program maturity, and time to implement. The options have been categorized as tried and true, ready for upgrade, and innovative. CO recommends that payers invest based on those categories. Hold fast on the tried and true. They're going to deliver consistent value. Continue to invest on the ready for upgrade. This is your opportunity for expansion and improvements. And plan and budget for new innovative solutions to maximize your overall opportunity. That takes us through our journey, the destinations on our expedition. And we'll close out with revisiting the questions that we started with. Where are we going? Payment integrity is moving quickly in the direction of avoidance before recovery, with a focus on increased prepayment reviews, including complex clinical reviews. Where are we departing from, and what is our path? Each payer will answer this differently based on where they are now in that payment integrity continuum. They may take a different path than the one that we suggested based on the market that they serve. The obstacles that a plan may experience is the technology adoption within their organization, the availability of subject matter experts in the payment and clinical space, and overall resources. Who is coming on our journey? Payers of all shapes and sizes, small regional health plans with 10,000 lives, and supersized major national players. How are we getting there? Companies like CO are ready to help payers evaluate their opportunities and partner to deliver one or more of the solutions, from tried and true to the very challenging new frontier. And finally, why are we going? Payers need to control medical cost, medical and administrative costs both, with a broad, multifaceted set of tools. We need new destinations to open more audit opportunities at the same time as improving our speed, reducing our costs, and improving the quality. Thanks for joining us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Monique, for walking us through the last part of the presentation there. I'm now happy to say that we are right on time to enter our question and answer period. So I encourage our attendees to please use that questions module on the right side of your screen. Send them in to me, and I'll be able to field them to Monique and Leslie. And since we have a little bit of time here, I know one of the things on that journey, Monique, that's step 2.5. Maybe, as people are submitting in their questions, could you please elaborate a little bit on what would we've done on that step and why we've placed it as 2.5 and not, let's say, a 4.5, something to circle back to at the very end of getting some of those more innovative solutions that you talked about.
All right. So always important to take the lessons learned and the insights that you're gaining and clean up your internal, your at-home, before you ask others to fix things. So this is an opportunity to look at the errors, high repeated errors that may be due to system limitations or policy gaps, and correct those things. So this should be an ongoing activity that a health plan would do, prioritizing their development budgets and looking for process improvements to eliminate those repeated errors. You don't want to continue to allow the errors to occur if they are preventable.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have a question here related to our outpatient claims, as I think in that section, Leslie, we received this question. It has to do with behavioral health, and if we consider that to be an outpatient claim that we would audit, and if we've seen anything there, or it's an area that we are exploring.
Yes, behavioral health is definitely a claim type that could be inpatient or outpatient, and there's always room for error in both settings. Our medical record reviews for behavioral health will identify trends such as claims not authorized and having those services, excessive services, things such as that. So we would definitely consider behavioral health in our realm of opportunities there.
Thank you. And it looks like we did omit that from our poll question, so my apologies on the leaving that off our poll question here. We're getting a question related to prepay, so maybe I'll throw this to Monique first, but Leslie, feel free to chime in. And that has to do with how do payers, let me see, a lot of questions coming in, so I lost it. How does a payer incorporate medical records into a prepayment review?
Right. Good question. There are two approaches that are possible. I call them approach A and B for lack of distinction. The first is to close the claim and ask for the medical records and review them upon submission. That stops the prompt pay time frame, but it doesn't always address the provider's concern that claims are being not paid. The second, and the one that is used most often, is to request the medical records in an expedited way and to complete the review during the initial prompt pay time frame. So depending on the amount of time that it takes to adjudicate a claim and the prompt pay time frame, certain states are much more at risk with smaller windows or strong penalties. So balancing that prompt pay fine and penalty possibility with the amount of time to review the records. So CO has the opportunity to expedite medical records requests and complete the review if we have a total of 10 days from before the prompt pay window would expire. So two methods depending on the culture and the market that the health plan has. Either may be appropriate in different scenarios.
Great, thank you, Monique. We have a question coming in on timing. A little unclear enough if they mean for this process overall or for each step individually, but maybe we can kind of talk through the timing of the steps individually, and then collectively I can tally that up as we go along. So, if Monique or Leslie,
okay.
Which one of you want to cover?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. Most programs or solutions have an implementation period of 90 to 180 days. So depending on the number of programs and approaches that were being deployed, you can look at that window for an implementation in our experience. It also, for most of what we talked about today, a health plan would start to realize benefits. So I'm thinking that the time frame question may be when do we see the benefits, not just how long does it take to implement. 90 days from the start of a process to start realizing benefits that would grow over time. These are general rules and something that may differ from plan to plan. The one exception to that that I would call out is the provider behavior modification. This is a long-term or a long lead time necessary to first identify and measure the provider, affect the change, and then monitor that change. So it takes between 9 and 12 months for the benefit to start being realized. So 90 to 100 days to implement, and between 90 to 120 days to see most benefits start to be realized, but a longer period on the provider behavior modification.
Okay. Thank you. And we have a question here on the relative ROIs between these four approaches. And I think, I suspect, that that's going to probably vary by the health plan and their specific situation. If they already have, some of these programs more mature, then increase investments or focus in an area, may not have as much of an ROI return. But anything that you would share on the ROI potential between these four solutions we've talked about?
Yeah, you're correct, Sean. It's going to depend on the line of business, the maturity, the scope of the audits. One of the driving factors for ROI is the cost of the claim. So higher dollar claims allow for that deeper dive analytics. I would suggest, and this is my personal opinion, is that provider behavior modification has the opportunity to have the best ROI because it will have that long-term residual impact and driving down the utilization and the overall spend. Once the effort is put in, it will be the gift that keeps giving rather than having to constantly search and do that exploration.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And as you were speaking, I kind of thought of a question that maybe some on the call are asking. Would you change anything with this approach based on line of business? So if someone has predominantly commercial versus predominantly, let's say, a Medicare Advantage plan, would that impact how you would organize this, or the approach that you would take?
I don't believe so. This is really laid out based on the level of effort, maturity of the programs, the opportunity. I think this is a good roadmap for a payment integrity program, regardless of the line of business.
Okay. Let's see. I have another question here around prepayment. For prepayment review, how do you, quote unquote, weed out the providers that are submitting a carbon copy or templated medical records? For example, the medical record is exactly the same and only the beneficiary ID and information has changed.
So how do you weed them out?
Yes.
That is identifying that as a pattern is going to occur with continued review. So we work closely with our clients. CO works closely with our clients to identify provider behavior and working with the clients to address that. That may result in denying the payment on a claim, putting the provider on notice.
Okay, here's kind of a funny one. What do you forecast the role of artificial intelligence, if at all, on payment integrity? I don't know if we didn't really touch on that at all in the presentation, so I'm kind of
natural
throwing you a bit
language,
of a curveball, but
natural language processing, being able to incorporate the medical records and interpreting them systematically will help us with better identification. And better identification, quicker identification, that will allow for the speed improvement that we've been talking about, as well as lowering the cost. So it is certainly on the horizon, and many payment integrity leaders are looking at investing in that space, as is CO.
Okay. Let's see. There's two questions here, and I'll kind of give you an outline and let you pick which one we want to respond to. Around property and casualty area, asking about our experience there, and then another asking about our experience with foreign providers, and they're not required to use CPT codes, which has some challenges with that.
Yeah, I can take this. CO does not work with property and casualty claims. We are completely dedicated to the healthcare space in our analytics, and do not deal with foreign claims.
Okay. Great. And then, okay, let's see. I'm going to ask one last question here before I get to kind of my closing comments here. And this is, this asker is noticing that E&M coding reviews are very labor intensive, and they're experiencing little return, but that the upcoding that occurs with these is a problem that needs to be addressed. Any ideas around programs related to E&M coding?
Leslie, do you want me to take this?
Either way, I can give some comments to that, yep. Monique, and then if you want to yep. fill in. Sure. We're seeing a lot of payers create their own policies as it relates to the E&M coding. So with those creations of those policies and putting those policies in place, I think is the first stopgap that can be done. But as far as the reviews, unfortunately, CMS does not have a lot of standardized mandates as it relates to the E&M coding, which makes it a little difficult when trying to roll that out in a organized fashion that CMS often paves the way to do. So I think the best first start is to create your own policies that set some guidelines that the providers can be held to.
Yeah, and I would add that we've had some very good success in identifying upcoding on E&M codes, and the challenge is in the high volume and lower dollar thresholds. So applied advanced analytics and the provider ranking can help reduce the number of providers that you investigate. And I would suggest that for the E&M space, the provider behavior modification would be an excellent solution to transition to. But we are having some good success in E&M upcoding and inappropriate modifier reviews.
Okay, great. We've got a couple of questions in here about specific capabilities that CO has. I'm going to ask that we respond to those. We'll follow up with you specifically on those if we didn't get to your questions today. So I always like ending a little bit early because I know we live in a day of back-to-back meetings, like no other time. So I always like to give people a little bit of a break before. So with that, I'll close today's webinar. I want to thank the audience so much for spending your time with us today. I want to especially thank Leslie and Monique for walking us through this content based on these questions. We had a lot of good engagement here. And as a reminder, because you also got a couple questions, we will be sharing a recording of this webinar with you since you registered, as well as a link to that attestation form from NHCAA, so we can make sure you get your CPE credits for that. And with that, I will conclude today's conference. Thank you again for your participation, everyone, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, guys.